Greetings and salutations to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Kluger welcomes you back to Grim Dawn 101. Today, we are in episode 2, focusing on leveling. Woo! One of the most, I suppose, basic, fundamental, one of the most fundamental parts of this game is leveling up. Getting further and further advanced in your character progression, picking new skills, wearing better gear. It's all really based on the whole leveling notion and concept. Excuse me one moment. Oh, excuse me, just getting over a cold. So yes, for today, I'm not going to go into crazy, super minutiae detail things like I do with my build guides in terms of selecting exact skills and how to go about that whole caper. That's probably more reserved for the build guides, focusing on the more broader picture of how leveling works in Grim Dawn for the newer player, really speaking. So if you're a new player and you're watching this video, the first preface really is if you're trying to figure out how to pick your skills, that experimentation is your friend. Get in there, have a read over the skills, figure out what you like, or follow a build guide and see if that starts to get you in the right direction with regards to how you want to build the character. But I reckon just getting in there, having a play about is a really good way to go. Now, how does leveling work in Grim Dawn? The basis of it is, of course, gaining experience. And down the bottom of the mastery bar you see here, down the bottom of your HUD, not mastery bar, is your experience meter. Down here, as you can see, I recently hit level 10 over here, and am current experience 9,644. So, as the basis of many RPGs, experience is the gateway to leveling up. And in leveling up in Grim Dawn, you are able to pick new skills. I mentioned in episode 1 that you're able to select 2 different masteries. And now that I'm level 10, we can have a look at those if I can press the right button. Undo class selection. So, you get your first mastery at level 2. So after you gain your very first level, going from 1 to 2, you pick your first mastery. I picked Demolitionist in that case. And then at level 10 is when you get to select your second mastery. So in this case, I want to be a soldier for my second mastery, which forms a commando. All combined mastery builds have names, and a commando in this case. So for the sake of demonstration, I will go into the soldier tree, just so as to show you how this works. So, how you do this is I have 3 points available. You gain 3 points every level that you gain until level 50, and after such time you gain 2 points per level. And these skill points either allow you to progress up your mastery bar or to select from your pool of skills within that mastery. Now, going up the mastery bar, as I'll coin it, I don't know what it's actually called per se, but you gain intrinsic passive enhancements from going up the mastery bar. So as you can see here for the soldier, if I put 1 point in there, I'll gain 5 physique, 3 cunning, 2 spirit, 28 health, and 10 energy. As for the demolitionist, at the moment, currently level 14, I've got 49 physique, cunning, spirit. We'll go into those in a little bit. But you continue to gain as you go up the mastery bar, which is quite key. So progressing up the tree is relatively important because those skills are quite useful for your general character progression, as well as being able to wear gear, energy for casting spells, and health, of course, needless to say. So I will go and put 1 point in my mastery bar for soldier, and in this case I will choose the skill Markovian's Advantage. I'll just pop 1 point in there, again just for the sake of demonstration. And I will also, do I want to go up there? Up here? No, I'll pop my last point in Fire Strike and bring it up to 6 out of 12. Boom. Awesome. So when you're leveling up, you can undo your points if you don't close the mastery pane, the skill pane. So I can click undo if I want to and reverse those skill selections. As you can see, I'll do it just for the sake of example. But once you close this, your skills are set in place unless you go visit your spirit guide like we talked about in episode 1, which is back in Devil's Crossing, where you can buy back your skill point allocations. Again, I'll repeat, you can't buy back your mastery bar though. That is permanent once you close the screen. Drink of water. So, this skill pane, there's a lot going on by the looks of it. But you can broadly break it down into, I guess, really 2 types of skills. You've got active skills and you've got passive skills. Active skills are represented by square icons and passive by circular icons. Passive versus active. An active skill is something you need to assign either to a button, one of your numeric buttons down below, or in some cases your left click as a default weapon attack. A good example of this is Fire Strike. So normally, if I close this off, your default weapon attack will be on your left click, which is just to use whatever weapon is in your hand. But using Fire Strike replaces that, and I get a whole bunch of stuff from that. So I get 110%, sorry, of my main hand damage at the moment, with 44 extra fire damage and 24% physical damage. Again, I'm not going to go into all the minute details of how all of this stuff works, not for this specific episode anyway, but we can go into that in a future, something in the future, so a more advanced leveling guide, and also the game guide on the Grim Dawn forums has a lot of good info on this stuff. So yeah, active and passive. Active is something you cast, passive is something that just in the background intrinsically buffs your character in a variety of ways. A good example of that, have I activated anything? Markovian's Advantage is a good example of that. So this is a skill that has an 8% chance to just activate without me doing anything other than attacking, and does certain types of damage. There's also complete passive sort of buffs, like for example Military Conditioning, which just is a passive boost to my physique and my health. There's also sort of passives that are linked to actives. For example, Fire Strike is an active skill. This is a skill I cast. And then the passive skills from Explosive Strike, Static Strike, and Brimstone link to the skill Fire Strike. I don't have to do anything to cast these extra passive skills other than firing Fire Strike, as it were. And there's one final skill worth mentioning here, which is kind of passive skills. I think they're referred to as transmuters, if I remember correctly. But they're these extra little Duvawakis here, the little ether crystals, which modify the way in which a skill works, which is kind of like an added layer of customization. So a good one here we'll focus on Fire Strike is the Searing Strike skill, which with 1 point in it would give us 25% crit damage. Total damage modified by 15%, so up 15%, and the skill costs 33% less energy. The caveat of using that skill is it requires a melee weapon or two-handed ranged weapon. So there's normally some sort of condition to, or there's a give and take to using a transmuter, but it could modify the skill to your advantage. So really, that's in a nutshell how the skills work. Like I said, I don't want to get too into the nitty-gritty, so like I said, if you're a new player, get in there and just mess about, try some skills out, because in the absolute worst case scenario, A, you buy back skills from your spirit guide, or B, if you're absolutely buggered and you don't know what to do, you can always re-roll a new character. Grim Dawn's kind of built around encouraging you to try new stuff, so that's always an option as well, and lends itself to quite a bit of fun. So that is in a nutshell how things work with picking your skills. Maybe we'll quickly mention devotion as well, because you will find that as you progress through the world. Devotion is not something, devotion points aren't something you gain through simply killing stuff and leveling up. You find devotion shrines, which you need to restore in a few different ways. Once restoring that shrine, you gain points to invest into devotion. I won't spoil exactly how those shrines work at this point in time, nor will I go again into too much detail about how these devotion tree works. This is probably a video in and of itself, but you start by investing in this crossroads, which are color-coded, basically, and you can see it across in the left-hand side, these affinities, and investing in that allows you to unlock some preliminary constellations, and that fans out and more and more and more to the point of, what's a good example? Behemoth. Down here, for example, you need a variety of different affinities to unlock it. But again, different video, but you will run across that even in the early game of Grim Dawn. For the sake of thoroughness, just looking at my notes, needless to say, how you gain experience is by killing enemies. Just kill stuff, you get experience, of course, as long as they're within a reasonable level to yourself, sort of just below or equal or above, you'll gain experience. And doing quests, of course, like any other RPG that you might have played. So, I've covered how skills work. Oh, one thing I didn't mention, which I really should have, is going up the mastery bar is what unlocks skills for you. I don't know how I didn't mention that. So, for example, in the soldier mastery, I've only invested 1 point in the mastery bar, which is only unlocked the first tier. And you can mouse over any skill to find out how many more points you need to invest in your default mastery bar to get to that skill. So Blade Arc, for example, if I wanted it, requires 9 additional points in soldier. Dead simple. So crank 9 more points into your mastery bar down below, and you'll be able to invest in Blade Arc. And the same goes for any other mastery that you choose. Awesome, so that covers all that detail, which is really, really good. With each level you gain, you also gain 1 attribute point per level, and you can invest these attribute points into either of physique, cunning, or spirit. These also influence your character, of course, as I mentioned before. These also tie into the gear you are able to wear. Gear is of course level dependent. A good example here is this bone snap gavel that I found, which I can't wield until level 14, but also requires 125 physique. Generally speaking, your tanky stuff like your maces and shields are going to need physique to wear. Your stuff like I think swords, if I'm not mistaken, and pistols and ranged weapons will need have a cunning requirement, and your magical stuff like wands and tomes and caster offhands will need a certain level of spirit. At a high level, again, we won't go into too much nitty-gritty because all these advanced stats are probably a topic for another video, but the basics of how these things work: physique, your physical conditioning, which gives you the strength to fight in heavier gear. In a nutshell, it gives you more HP and makes you more tanky, influences your ability to absorb damage and take less critical hits. Cunning influences your physical damage types, so your ability to deal physical and pierce damage, and also makes you crit more. And spirit is kind of your magical magey oogie boogie stat, which influences your energy and energy regeneration and the damage that your magical attacks do, which, if I recall correctly, also includes poison damage. So that's how those effectively work. Those attributes here do influence stuff like your offensive and defensive ability, which are kind of tied to what I was just describing. So offensive ability is your ability to hit and crit, and critical hit, that is, and defensive ability is your ability to take damage or avoid it and reduce the amount of critical hits that you take. At a more basic level. I want to go into the more advanced stuff in like a Grim Dawn 201 or something like that, you know. I'm just trying to focus on the basics to get you started through the game. Actually, you know what? I think I just about covered everything with that, because I mentioned that leveling up, of course, lets you wear better gear, which is an intrinsic part, a core mechanic of so many RPGs that we've seen in the past. So the higher level you get, the better stuff you get to wear, and gear in of itself is another tutorial. So I think that about does it, ladies and gentlemen. That's pretty much how leveling works. I hope this is something that you found helpful. Please, as always, let me know if you have any comments or questions below. If there is anything I might have missed in this tutorial, I'll be happy to assist you further. Or if you have suggestions for future videos, I do have another 1 or 2 planned. But if you want to see a specific topic covered, please let me know, and I'll be sure to do so. So on that note, ladies and gents, like I said, leave your likes and your comments below. I hope to see you again soon. My name is Kluger, and you have a good one.